In today's first reading, God instructs Elijah to travel to Zarephath, where a widow has been designated to provide for him. That designation was a peculiar choice. Like most widows in her day, the widow of Zarephath had barely enough resources to survive, let alone provide for someone outside her household. So when Elijah arrives in Zarephath and asks the widow for a bit of bread, she tells him that she has just enough flour to make one last meal for her and her son. Elijah responds that if the widow gives him some food, God will ensure that she and her son and Elijah have enough to eat for the foreseeable future. Now the widow could easily have turned Elijah away. For all she knew, he was a charlatan who was trying to pilfer the little food she had left. Instead, in an incredible gesture of faith and compassion, she shared her bread with Elijah. And just as he prophesied, the widow and her son and Elijah were able to eat for the next year. The widow's story seems like a fantasy. When most people face a life-threatening situation, their natural inclination is to turn inward, to focus on their own desperate plight. Yet, when confronted with the prospect that she and her son might soon starve to death, the widow of Zarephath found it in her heart to share what little she had with someone else in need, a man she'd just met. It may be hard to imagine anyone behaving like that. But then you learn about someone like Asal Sayas. Asal was born in Tehran in 1983. When she was an infant, her family moved to America to escape political persecution in Iran. After graduating from college, Asal went to work on Capitol Hill, eventually becoming the head lobbyist for AMFAR, the Foundation for AIDS Research. In March 2020, she was diagnosed with stage 4 colon cancer and told she had 6 months to live. At that point, it would have been understandable if Asal left her job to focus on treating her cancer. Instead, she redoubled her efforts to promote AIDS research and HIV prevention. In addition, she became a fierce advocate for people with cancer, working on the Biden administration's Cancer Moonshot initiative and starting a nonprofit to support people with colon cancer. Then, shortly after receiving her own diagnosis, Asal learned that her father had stage 4 liver cancer. She became his caregiver, even while continuing her tireless advocacy for AIDS and cancer research. I learned about Asal's amazing story when I read her obituary. Asal Sayas died on April 21st. She was 42 years old. In her obituary, a woman who had befriended Asal through an online cancer support group described how Asal's phone calls always gave her reassurance and hope. There was something about her that was so full of hope. She never called to feel sorry for herself. She was just always so excited to talk. She just had that vibe that there's so much hope left. She wanted to find it. We all long to find hope, especially during those times when life's challenges leave us disheartened. The prophet Elijah grew discouraged too. Sometime after he met the widow, he thought about abandoning his prophetic mission, and he prayed to God for guidance. God delivered a message of encouragement to Elijah, but not with some spectacular display of power, an earthquake or a fire or a driving wind. Instead, God spoke to Elijah in a gentle, whispering voice. In our chaotic world, so many loud voices are screaming for our attention that they often drown out the quiet voices that God uses to encourage us, like the voices of the widow of Zarephath and Asal Sayas. When facing crises in their lives, those women chose to live not in quiet desperation, but in quiet faith, quiet hope, quiet love. It's time we started listening to the quiet voices all around us.